is that those are very handy attributes. We're social creatures. We're really incredible creatures. Only humans, in the words of Otto Rank, make the unreal real. All right, hold those thoughts. We got Darwin in the 1860s or so. Now let's go backwards a couple of decades in time to the dead Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard. Who's ever heard the name Kierkegaard? Who's ever tried to read Kierkegaard? Ow, all right, hard, but definitely worth the effort, because what Kierkegaard said in the 1840s was, you know what, people are so smart that we actually realize that we're here. All right, in psychology today, they call it consciousness or self-awareness. Call it whatever you want, and again, just to make sure that we're all on the same page here, who knows that you're here? It's not a trick question. Just a couple of hands. Who knows that you're here? All right, it's Skidmore, 50%. I'm having a good day today. You're, again, a more savvier lot. It's not a trick question. You know that you're here. And we take for granted that we're here and we know it. But Kierkegaard insists that only human beings are sufficiently intelligent to, in his words, render themselves the objects of their own subjective inquiry. So a rosebush is here but doesn't necessarily know it. An armadillo is here but doesn't necessarily know it. I'm not going to argue with you about your dog or your cat and whether he or she knows that it's here. I just need you to grant that you're here, and I think we got enough affirmative reactions to that query in order to proceed, because what Kierkegaard said is, look, once you know that you're here, and only humans are aware of the fact that they exist, in a little book called Fear and Trembling, what Kierkegaard said is that once you know that you're here, you necessarily experience two uniquely human emotions that he called awe and dread, respectively. Awesome and dreadful. And that means awesome and dreadful. So let's talk about awesome first for 30 seconds maybe. I wish we had more time before we get miserable for half an hour or so. All right, it is awesome to be alive and to know it. Who's ever woken up one day and just been high on life? Nothing happened in particular. Didn't win a Nobel Prize. Didn't win $1 million. You just wake up one day and are sublimely and just appreciative of the ultimate human prerogative, which is just to bask in the spontaneous exuberance of life itself. Who's ever had that time? All right, hold that thought, because again, it's declining on my side of the border. So hold that thought. It is great. It's great, great, great to be alive. And it's because we're here and we know that we're here that we're able to recognize and appreciate the sublime joy of life itself. On the other hand, what Kierkegaard said is, you know what? It's dreadful also to know that you're here, because if you're smart enough to know that you're here, unless you're a child or an idiot, you will also recognize that you're not always going to be here. All right? Kierkegaard called that the paradox of finitude in the context of infinitude. In very simple terms, if you know that you're here, you also know that, like all forms of life, you're not going to be here forever. I don't want to ruin your day, but you're going to die someday. Steve already told you that, so he ruined your day rather than me. Not only that, it's not only the fact that you die someday that is psychologically problematic, but you're also bright enough to know that your death could come at any time for reasons that you could never anticipate or control. Now, again, I can't speak for you, but I might be all right. No, I wouldn't be all right because I'm not big on death, but if I knew I was going to live to 100 or 120, and then I was going to die in my bed very peacefully with my family sitting around, hooked arm in arm, singing Kumbaya as they chanted me into the hereafter, I might be able to be all right with that. I'm not all right with the possibility that I could get done in half an hour and walk outside and get stricken by a crane or a meteor, or go skiing and have my head turned into a Jackson Pollock painting on the side of a tree. And the point is that it's not only the awareness of death that's unsettling, it's the coincident recognition that your death can occur at any time for reasons that you could never anticipate or control. Right, and just to really put an ice pick in your brainstem, what Becker says is, you know what? There's something else that bothers us, and that is that we really are uncomfortable with our basic corporal animal nature. We don't like to admit that we're basically animals. I know old-timers might know this. I don't know about the youth. Has anyone seen the Elephant Man film? All right, Elephant Man, folks. Remember when the Elephant Man says, "I am not an animal"? And you're like, yeah. But then you think about it for a moment, and you're like, well, Mr. Pachyderm, you are an animal, and I'm an animal. Like it or not, you are a breathing piece of defecating, urinating, vomiting, ejaculating, menstruating, exfoliating, postnasal dripping. Meat, no more fundamentally significant or enduring than a cucumber or a cockroach. Now, you don't have to like that. But the point that Becker makes is that really you wouldn't want to have to be on the side of the debating team to argue against those propositions. You will someday die, your death can occur at any time, and you're a talking sausage, a cold cut with an attitude, you're Spam with a plan, without the can. I got a couple others, but we're in a rush. But the point is that all of those things, Becker argues, conspire to render human beings potentially prone to waves of debilitating terror. What Becker hypothesizes is that if that's the only thing that you ever thought of, I'm going to die someday, I could die tomorrow, I'm a respiring pincushion, just a pulsating biological blob that you wouldn't be able to get up in the morning. Right? And so what he argues, what Becker hypothesizes, is that human beings had to, back in the day, come up with some way to manage the otherwise potentially overwhelming terror that's engendered by the uniquely human awareness of death. And what he says is that human beings quite ingeniously, although unconsciously, confronted that issue and solved that existential dilemma through the construction and maintenance of what anthropologists call culture. Right? Now, according to Becker, and this is pretty standard anthropological fare, culture consists of humanly constructed beliefs about the nature of reality that are shared by individuals in a group. That's the pretty standard part of it. The more, or the less standard part of it is when Becker says that a primary function of those beliefs is to minimize or eliminate the otherwise paralyzing anxiety that the awareness of death would impose upon us.